Okay, here I am. Hi, Jolene Jang here in suburb of Seattle. I'm Japanese, Chinese, Swedish, and I'm a middle-aged woman on a background of a PowerPoint that says othered. So the idea of tonight's program was Kevin's idea of othered, because if we can share how we feel othered, maybe there's a way to try and bridge different stories. Even, if you're not a person of color, you still have stories. And so how do we bridge that gap? And I began Asian Allies and Empowered Asians and this whole thing because with George Floyd, as well as the Atlanta spa shootings of the Asians, and to try and let people know what's happening for Asians, that Asians are people of color too, and they are hated on and killed as well. And that should not be okay. Just because they're Asian, we can kill them. That should not be okay. And when I tried to put the word out there of what's happening to Asians, I got silence, and I continue to get silence. And that's why I started Empowered Asians and Asian Allies. And having this every Tuesday meeting gives me hope, because there's always a few people who are on this call and they're active and they're dedicated to be present with us. And people can pop in and pop out. You give a few minutes here and there, what you can. So I appreciate that. And so I'm going to share with you a few things just to give you a little bit of background. Some of you are new. So last week, we talked about the murders of the Asian massacres of last week, and that on top of Lunar New Year. And we talked about Lunar New Year too, as well, to share that there's like about 12 different cultures that celebrate that as well. And we got to hear Asian voices and how some Asian voices are impacted. And Gil on the call, who's Filipino American, he also shared as well. And this is a great chance to ask questions for the non-Asians, to ask questions, to listen, ask questions, and no questions are, what's the word for dumb? You're not supposed to say dumb. No questions are inappropriate. That's not true. Anyways, I don't know what the word is, but no, you can ask questions and it's okay. And so this is recorded. I try and record as much as possible. We want participation. So if it stunts the growth of participation, then we won't record. But because there's a lot of people who do want to come, but they have kids and different activities that they can't. And I also put out a lot of different videos to share. So as an ally, what you can do is to share the stories that we share in Facebook and also LinkedIn. And I made, I think it was a 5-6 minute video of what you can do to support your Asian American friends and colleagues and family members, and just kind of do something, because doing nothing is not helpful. Add Asian Americans to your newsfeed. And I have that listed on my website, 𝗀𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 saying. Observe the news cycle. How often, like the Asians are now kind of moving out of the cycle. It's been a week. And so, there's other news that's kind of taken that place. And so, um, and then to reach out to Asian Americans. And, I kind of share, just reach out. If you don't say the right thing, it's okay. Be worth, take the risk to be awkward, and just, do that. Show that, it's worth the embarrassment in case it is embarrassing for you. And silence and compliance talking. We did a program about this, and this is also recorded to talk about white silence is not helpful. And even if you don't know what to say, that's painful as well. So it's you're not winning there. You're trying not to offend somebody, but you're not helping. You're worsening that situation. So we talk about that because I know that's hard to understand. So that's why we talk about it. We talk about hard things here. And then this was just, silence is compliance. Well, this is a Asian guy who was killed and stabbed by 8 teenagers. And I think what's important to remember that fetishization of Asian Americans goes on all the time in Hollywood and all the time. And this affects what we wear. Uh, one of us on the call, we talked about this, like it impacts what we wear. And I've never worn clothing that fits me until the last few years, because I don't want to look like I'm a certain, I don't want to look too aggressive with my clothing. And here, this was a recent ad selling Asians. So, and then Kevin and I do a lot of programs together to be able to share. Let's look at it from a Black and Asian point of view. I speak really on Asian Americans because that's what I can speak to. But I wish, I try and be inclusive as I can with my knowledge, and we educate people, being able to share different cultures. And there'll be times where you're on a call and the person of color is attacked, or the person doesn't have to be of color, somebody is attacked verbally. So we talk about, what do you do and what is the impact? And because Asians, right? Asians are different than Black folks, different than LGBT folks. I mean, we're all different. But I would say with Asians, there are some commonalities. So sharing, this is recorded, and we shared kind of what you can do and what the impact is on the Asian that's being attacked. And this probably doesn't feel like it's fun right now, but I have gamified our learning. This happens to not be one of those presentations, but the way that I try and educate people is to make it fun. Use Name That Tune, and use Jeopardy, and hey, who is this over here, and who broke the color barrier? And so when I am educating for employees, you got to make it fun. With you all here, you have taken your own time to be here and are more on board with this. So, and by the way, Asian Allies gives me hope. Every week I get to meet a handful of people who are taking action and who are wanting to care. And I'm hoping to share with you that Asians are not all alike. So we do a lot of education around Lunar New Year, Diwali, Filipino American Heritage Month, because I'm Japanese and Chinese and Swedish, and I didn't learn really about anything growing up. So anything I'm learning here is through studying and through each other. So I know what I know, and we can always be sharing. And so I ask different members of the group to share. Okay, so here we are back to othered. So unpin me here. So the idea is to share different stories. And something I want to be very aware of is this is Asian Allies. So I want to center Asian voices first. And I think that's really important. I think that I was on some other listening sessions, and it's like it's an Asian group, but you have others sharing first. So with Asians, if you have other people who are bolder, louder, more passionate, etc., the Asians are probably not even going to talk, because somebody just like did a performance and was so great at that that it's like, oh, I'm not going to share my tiny little small story, and I was told to be quiet anyways. So and I guess something you can take home as well, as if you want to hear from Asians, you've got to kind of be vulnerable, set the tone, prep people ahead of time, be ready for nobody to speak, but try and welcome people and really prep this. And I am not always certain who's going to show up on this call, so I'm usually prepared for if nobody's going to speak. So I'll share a couple of stories, of Asian stories. And if there are Asians that on this call that want to share, that is great. And then after Asians, let's have people of color then share, and then the rest. And so let me share a couple of stories here, and then we'll open it up. Let's see. Jolene is rusty. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. Okay, so Christina, she's one of our educators. She's a librarian, teacher, educator, and she just moved to Germany. And she was very active in our group, and they moved now, and there's a time difference. But she shared with me today. Um, so she's Filipino American, and her kids. This is Christian, who's an artist, and he drew that picture. And so this is the second. This was the second day of school for him, and hearing some German students just talk about, oh, and by the way, he had been, I think, 2 or 3 years of online learning, and he was so excited, to be around other kids and everything. And second day, and then they're talking about how Chinese are bad. Now he's not Chinese; he's Filipino American, but nobody knows the difference, and so he's lumped in that thing. So that's sad. And her girls, they were making friends in the library and in Germany, and you know they're thinking, oh, we have some friends, and then the other girls are doing the slanted eyes thing with their fingers and everything. And this is it's peculiar how often this happens. From In the Olympics, there was the volleyball team. These are adults, mind you, and we see this all the time. And understand that it goes back to when they were kids, and that there's a lot of triggers and memories with that. So something that may seem like not a big deal, it's lasting, it's impactful. And for these Filipino Americans now in Germany, they're so excited, and yet now they're already made to feel like the other. And I'm going to share a couple more, and then if any of the Asians would like to share, raise your hand. So I did an interview with 3 sets of teenagers, 16 to 18 years old, and these are um, in Pennsylvania, and at their school, it is actually 30% Asian. And I just want to share a couple of things that were stood out to me, is that they all wish they were white. And if you think about that, I bet you if you did an interview with Asians um, growing up in America, how many would say that? From all the people I've listened to and talked to, I would say that's a lot of Asians who wish they were white. And I'm sure that's not just a thing that Asians. I don't know. I haven't interviewed Black folks, but I think it's possible. Not that they want to be white, but they just don't want to be bullied and teased. And these young girls also, particularly the South Asian ones, hey, can I cheat off of you? And they think that people are making friends with them, but uh, they're just, people are just trying to cheat off of them, and so they do, because they want friends. And most of these young ladies also felt ugly. They all experienced food discrimination. Um, One of the gals, and their moms are making their lunches, and they don't want to insult their moms, but they're also embarrassed. Let's say for the South Asians, it's like curries and things. And so they will like quickly, eat it really quickly with a lunchbox in front of their face, and just like really fast, or um, it's just all the things that they do to try and fit in, because they are feeling so othered. And this is a really good, heartfelt, empowering, and painful video to watch all at the same time. I highly suggest it. Um, and these young women are doing things. And this gal here in the bottom right corner, Brooke, she's Black and Korean, and she's president of both clubs, the Black and Korean Club. And so these ladies we want to follow and see what they're up to. Let me just share, I think, one more. Um, Brian will try and pop in here. We'll see if he does. So this is Amy, and she's Vietnamese American, and she's written a number of books. So a lot of Asians are creating their stories now. There are a lot of Asian authors out there, and she is one of them. And we did an interview with her, and she is just a waterfall of, a lot of Asians just don't say anything, and then explode. And this was a display of a lot of crying and just feeling so hurt and seeing all of the Asians being ignored and so on. And so there's a video with her. So I am going to remove my spotlight. So I wanted to illustrate some of these other moments. And these, I mean, all my examples are about violence and hate, but that doesn't have to be your story, but that's certainly what is on my mind. Um, do we have any Asians that might share? And I could also stop recording or not stop recording. Okay. Catherine? And recording okay? Okay, great. And unmute yourself. Yep.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Yeah, Jolene, thanks for sharing those examples. I had a reaction to a lot of those. I think those really were similar to a lot of my experiences. So I actually don't want to share anything that is like too common. Actually, what I want to share, it might be out of scope, and I'm not sure, but
Nothing's out of
this is
scope.
what came up for me.
Nothing's out of scope.
Yeah, so I grew up in a suburb of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was very white. There were maybe a handful of other Asian families in my town. I also grew up during a time before the internet. So that's a little bit of context for you. So the stories that I was thinking of when I was thinking what to share have less to do with other interactions I've had with people, but have to do with, I don't know, they're like bigger, I don't know, they're structural things that have made me feel othered. Really mainly to do with my body and my appearance. I guess that came up for a lot of the teens, but I want to share some concrete things with you that I've become aware of at various times in my life, mostly adult life, and some within just the past couple of years even. So it's things like how my hair is different from the dominant culture's hair. So when I went to salons and looked at the magazines, the catalogs of hairstyles, I never saw anybody who looked like me or had hair like mine. And I often came away from those experiences with really bad haircuts because stylists didn't know how to cut Asian hair, and that they didn't know that every single scissor cut would show. So I came out with like really choppy hair. It wasn't until I was well into adulthood that I understood I needed to find somebody who understood Asian hair to have a good haircut. Other things like makeup. Growing up in a white suburb, I would go to like the mall makeup counters and have somebody help me pick out makeup colors, but they never knew like what colors would look good on me. Always turned out badly. Also, application techniques were different too. They didn't know how to handle a monolid with a hood, right? They were always looking for a crease, but there's no crease. I now have, like, my eyes have changed because of pregnancy, like that's a different thing. But it wasn't until YouTube and Asian makeup influencers that I really learned that there are techniques, of course, like, of course, Asian women know how to put on makeup. Jolene's a great example. Like, she has her eyeliner, like your eyeliner looks great. But I didn't learn that until recently. Can I do a couple more?
Yeah, please.
Okay, thanks. Eyewear. Oh my, this was a big one for me. So I have really poor eyesight, as many Taiwanese Americans do. I didn't realize for a long time that glasses, like frames, were not made for faces like mine. And so for a long time, I really couldn't understand like why so many frames that I tried on looked just weird on me, or they never stayed up on my face. Like, they would always slide down my nose. And it wasn't until very recently, after I bought a pair of glasses, by the way, that I learned about the low nose bridge fit. And so because on average, Asian faces have a lower nose bridge relative to their pupil height, different proportions for facial features like higher cheekbones, slightly wider faces. There's a couple other things that really affect how glasses fit. And so I didn't really realize this. Like, this is why when I went to the optician's store to try on glasses, I'd have to try on many frames to find anything that looked okay. Anyway, there's the low nose bridge fit that really helps a lot with that issue. I've recently become more active, so I've also started swimming. Goggles would fit weird. I would always get leaks until I discovered that there are custom fit goggles. Like, there were no goggles that would fit an Asian face. Anyway, these were like, I could go on. Oh, shoes. Last example, shoes. So footwear where a good fit is important, like dress shoes, athletic shoes, that like cycling shoes, climbing shoes, snowboarding boots, all of these things where fit is really important. I didn't realize that, like, my feet aren't weird, they're just Asian. So Asian feet, as it turns out, on average are wider in the forefoot and narrower in the heel. And so, like, when I would put on shoes or boots, my toes would get squeezed and my heel would slip out. So I would step out of it. It's just always uncomfortable. And so I thought, okay, maybe I just am not meant to wear cute shoes. It's just something I accepted until I realized, oh, my feet aren't weird, they're just Asian. And so I started looking for Asian shoe companies, and that has really helped a lot.
Are there? My mind is blown. I thought, oh, my dad has wide feet, I have wide feet. I didn't know it was an Asian thing. So all the things you're saying right now, like the goggles, I wear a ski mat. I wear
there's
like,
Asian fit goggles. That. Yes, that's right.
I didn't know
there's
that until now, Catherine.
Ski masks, absolutely, and helmets too. Oh my goodness, like, so many things I'm discovering about the things we put on our bodies are not made for us. And that has made me feel like completely othered, which is why I'm talking about this, but also like has opened my eyes to like, it gives me feelings, first of all. So my feelings spanned from like, oh, I'm such a victim. Like, I'm implicitly being told to literally fit in to these things that don't fit me. And to like empowerment, where I'm like, oh, I actually can do things like shop for, I guess, spend my money with companies that do make things for my body. Also, I've started sewing. I think I told Jolene this, but like, I started sewing. So I sew clothes that fit me. And that's incredibly empowering. But anyway, I've taken up too much time. Thank you for listening. I'm also happy to answer questions.
Yeah.
I could go on about this, by the way.
Okay. So I'm going to highlight, this is seriously, I'm shocked. like I'm learning, and that's why you need to have like Asian friends.
Yeah.
See, I'm missing out. I didn't know until right now about my feet. Yeah. And I also am trying to multitask, and it's hard.
Yeah. Feet, glasses, clothes.
Yeah.
Goodness,
so
I could go on.
So Judy, I was trying to highlight you. I'm gonna remove myself, maybe. Sorry. Ask.
It's okay. I'm off camera anyway. So
okay. You're right. Okay. So let's hear from the other Asians here. Do you want to chime in on what she said? And then you could add your own as well.
I totally agree with what Catherine had said. I'm like, wait a second. Like, I never realized about the whole glasses thing until I was in New York City, Manhattan's Chinatown. And that's where I've gotten glasses done. And I'm like, hey, these fit actually. Because when I go to Pearl Vision or Lens Crafters or whatever the other places and all that, it's like, how come they keep falling, or how come they don't fit properly and stuff like that? And then the optician person was like, oh, because Asian noses are different. I'm like, they are? I had no clue. And so it takes me a while. Like, I to be honest, my glasses are like 10 plus years old. I need to go get them redone and stuff like that. But I'm not often in New York City to do that, especially during the pandemic. I haven't gone anywhere. But I could totally relate to what Catherine was saying about from the hair to the clothes to the shoes. And like, it takes me forever to purchase. Like when people buy shoes online, I'm like, I always end up like, oh no, now I'm stuck with these because I don't want to return them because it costs too much money and stuff, but they don't fit properly. So I end up donating them. So like Goodwill has like a lot of new pairs of shoes for me because they don't fit properly. And it's usually like the top, whatever it's called, the top of the foot. It doesn't, or like you were saying, it's wider there, but narrower here. I'm like, why doesn't this make sense, et cetera, et cetera. All different sorts of things. But yeah, a
Wow.
lot of times of feeling othered. And Catherine was saying she's from, I think Pittsburgh area, but somewhere in Pennsylvania. And I grew up where I'm in Philadelphia. And my family was the only minority family in my neighborhood / area and stuff growing up for the first, I would say 15 years. And so I felt a lot of the whole othering thing. And to be honest, I remember, stupidly as it sounds, like as a little kid thinking, I'm not as pretty as Jen because Jen has this golden blonde hair and like so-and-so has this brown hair and like they're like the pretty girls and stuff like that. And the fact that like my hair cannot hold a curl because guess what? I'm Chinese. So my hair doesn't really hold a curl unless there's a lot of hairspray and other heating tools involved. And I'm like, ouch, I don't want to be burnt by that. And I don't like the chemicals because my mom is one of those people that every year she would get a perm, like the Asian perms. And I remember thinking, I hate the smell of this. This is chemicals. My head hurts when I'm in there. This cannot be good for you. But she's like, but that was like her favorite thing to do. Well, not favorite, but like she felt like she had to do that because she didn't like her straight hair, or she lost a lot of volume and body in her hair, especially after she came to the States and she started having children and everything. And that's a whole other thing about, hair loss and pregnancy and all that stuff. But I didn't understand all that. All I knew was like, oh, well, if all the other Asian ladies have like curly hair, why want my hair to be curly too? But it would never hold it. Or even as simple as having a French braid. Like all my friends could have like these cute little French braids. And I'm like, I can't do this. It would always fall out and stuff like that. And it didn't, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. But in a sense of feeling other and also feeling belonging and stuff, I know sometimes, I would say sometimes like older generations of people have certain thoughts about how things should be, or they have anger towards certain groups because of past experiences and or what's happened in history. But in my head, I kind of do like, okay, I totally understand what happened in the history. I read about it, studied it, whatever. But I also judge it by like, how am I treated by each individual person? So I remember once when I was like 5 or 6 years old and being on the subway in New York City, and you know how crowded those trains can get and everything, and it's very jolting, and you're jostled back and forth. And I remember as a little kid, the train had jostled, and I wasn't sitting down, so I was standing with my family, but I was little and short and all that. And I could have easily fallen down, except somebody reached out to grab my arm so that I wouldn't fall down. And I remember that very vividly, that it was a person of color that was not of my race. And I was thinking like, see, everybody helps each other and all that, people are, it's not like how the news would talk about things, it's not like, okay, this, Black people hate white people hate Black people, Asian, like all that sort of stuff. And I was like, hey, wait a second, this person helped me and everything. And from that point onwards, I would always think like, I had certain classmates that were bused into my local grade school. And I'm like, hey, she's super friendly. And I was friends with everyone. And I think that kind of leads to my mentality of like, hey, everyone's the same, or everyone's different in their own individual way. And we can all love, help, and respect one another and all that stuff. Oops, you're muted, Jolene.
Sorry, you said, Judy, you're in New York, is that right?
I'm in Philadelphia, but my family's all in New York.
Oh, okay. And I wanted to welcome Sylvie to the conversation, and anybody who I didn't see out there. So we're talking about feeling othered, and here's the challenge. Like, I'm learning these things from Catherine and Judy as Asian women, because there were a couple of Asians in my school, but I didn't. When did you talk about that stuff is girly anyways, and I'm a tomboy. So so learning about my shoes right now, just learning about my feet, how they're wide. I just learned that now. I didn't know there was something about that. And Asian fit glasses. So Oakley, Ray-Ban, Maui Gyms is called Universal Fit and Asian Fit. So Oakley started, I think, 2006, but there's all these, and I talk about that in my programming to talk about how these companies are realizing, oh, there's some Asians with some money and it is worth it for us. And then, so I mean, I'm just, and the hair, yeah, I have to put in a lot of hairspray and I don't want to. So this is not about, and just to be clear, you know, I think we're talking about hair and different things. That's not what this program is about, but it's just things that I never thought about. And also when you are not around, you don't have exposure to other people like yourself, you don't know. And I think that's so important. I was writing this, I'm nominated for this other thing. And what do you tell your younger self? Have some Asian friends. Because the last, whatever, many years, I've been in the National Speakers Association. There's no Asians there. There's 7. And so anyway, so just thoughts I'm thinking about here. Gil, would you like to add to the conversation?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so unfortunately, I have like so many incidents I could talk about. You know, living in the Seattle area over 50 years now, you encounter just so many different things. I'll talk about the first incident. I remember working at a hospital to try to earn money for college. That was always my attitude, just enjoying work and always having a smile on my face. Well, there's this little boy, and he was just when he saw me, he was sitting in a waiting area because I was delivering lunches to patients. And I remember he was just like, trying to mimic a foreigner's voice, with me. And I knew he was just a little kid, and that didn't bother me so much. It was when his father was also laughing at what he did, and other white people were there and they were laughing, and I just felt so different and so small. I mean, and I remember, telling my manager about it, and she just, told me, you just got to have a thick skin when they do that. Just do your job and, just ignore it when they do that. So I ended up just, kind of like just swallowing it. I didn't know what else to do. So I just basically absorbed it and then just, just focused on, like, well, this money is just for college anyway. So, if this is the type of environment, hopefully when I get my college degree, I can, go to a different environment. So that's like one incident. Another incident, I remember I was even in the international district in Seattle, and there's this white gentleman right next to me at the stoplight, and he just told me to leave his country. And when I heard that, because when you get like hit with this a lot, unfortunately for me, my anger got the best of me, and I just started saying, like, what makes you so entitled? Like, are you, like, American Indians probably here before you? And then, I followed him. I did the dumbest thing. He went into the alley and I followed him in there because I was so upset. And then he just started running away from me. And I remember talking to my wife about it. She said, "Gil, you've got a wife and kids. Why would you do something that dumb? I mean, in an alley, come on, you gotta think twice before you do that." So that was another incident. Let's see, there's another incident too where I had a close friend. We both graduated from computer science together, and he was applying for a government job. And I asked him, like, hey, do they have other openings? And he told me, like, well, you probably wouldn't get in. I go, like, well, why not? And he said, like, well, you're not white. It's like, what does that have to do with it? Don't they just hire, based off of qualifications? And he said, like, yeah, but it's Department of Defense, and you probably shouldn't apply. And I've had other friends, just tell me different things, growing up. And yeah, I mean, when I have like so-called friends like that, I basically disassociate with them when they tell me things that are, that basically make me feel less of myself. So anyways, those are just some examples.
I'm wondering, Gil, when did you decide to do the work in Asian ERGs? And have you done advocacy work before then?
Yes. Yeah, prior to my the company I'm working for now, the company before that, I started our first Filipino diversity group, where we would do during Philippines Independence Day, we'd have like a dance troupe come in, we'd have like food brought in, and then another time of the year we would do something for the local Filipino high school kids. Like we even had like an Xbox that they could win, and we talk about like different techniques they could use for looking for a job from high school. So that was well attended as well. And yeah, the workplace work for me has been kind of my outlet. Knowing like the things that I've gone through, I want to make it as smooth as possible for just the rest of my people that look like me.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's very exciting to see what you're doing at your Asian ERG. Let's see, Sylvie, would you like to share, introduce yourself, and maybe a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Sylvie. I'm located in Maryland. And Jolene, nice to see you again. We sort of recently met at an event conference just this month. And I'm happy to be here. And I guess, if on the topic of feeling othered, sorry, I don't have my camera on. I just got back from the gym, but I present very, very Asian, right? I'm Asian American, 100%, and we can always talk about these like super, sort of the first time I was called a slur word, because that's obviously, that's happened, but it to me it's more about sort of the more everyday things, even in the work context, and this is prior to Zoom and video conference calls, but I would have these conference calls for months and months with I do conferences for scientists all over the world, and I would have board calls for months and months with all these people from all over the world, and I'll finally meet them for the first time in person for a conference, and one board member just straight up to my face was like, you don't look like what I thought you would look like, and that's actually happened to completely separate groups, two completely separate people. And I'm like, what is that supposed to mean? Like, and it's those micro ones, right? That like kind of, it's just like a death by 1,000 cuts. You know what I mean? And just like, yeah, it starts grating at you after a while. And it's just like another example of I'm not white, or I'm not what you thought I was. What does that mean? And something a little bit more, local to my area. Again, I'm from Maryland, but sort of we call this this area the DC, Maryland, Virginia, DMV area. And when the Virginia Tech shootings happened, my father was still in the workforce at the time, and when the news came out that the shooter was Korean American, and I'm Korean American, and just sort of the fallout of that from the community. My father told me that at work, so he worked for the USPS. He had colleagues that were like, "Hey man, are you going to shoot us up?" Like things like that. I'm just like, wow, people have no chill at all. Like don't even try to hide it. Like, oh, you better not shoot us, man. And so he was going through stuff like that, and just being Korean was kind of a thing that I had to sort of feel like I had to hide for a little bit, just like, I'm not going to shoot people, it's like, we're not all like that, like, I'm just like, oh God, like, I feel so tired and exhausted. I had to like, sort of feel like I have to explain myself. And I'm one of the good ones. Like, I shouldn't have to say that. Right. But it's just like, you feel like you have to, and it's just exhausting existing sometimes, but it's not always like that. But it again, it's just all the little things that happen. And I don't want to ramble too long, but those are just little examples.
Sylvie, can you share with us in, let's say, in the hospitality industry, are there ways that you feel othered that you're comfortable to say?
Well, the first example I actually provided about just, hey, like you don't look like what I thought you would look like, or, just again, and then it's like, oh, I know this one Asian person in the hospitality industry. Do you know them? No, I don't. Like, come on, man. Like, so that's happened several times. Or like, hey, like, and again, I don't think people even realize they're doing it, but it's like, again, I'm Korean American, and they'll be like, oh, like I love this like sushi place, which is Japanese. Just like, oh God. And then it's like, what people don't realize is when those sort of microaggressions happen, it's like we have to, in that moment, decide, do I want to take the energy and my time to like correct and teach, or do I just suck it up and just let it pass? Right. And it's that sort of battle every time something like that happens, because it's exhausting. Right. But yeah, so it's again, little things, and also feeling like there's not a lot of people that look like me in the industry, right? It's not something, like my parents certainly didn't expect me to grow up to be an event specialist, right? And so, it's not a typical career for people that look like me, and not really well known, and this is why I'm really glad I ran into you and I saw your little button and I was like, I like it. So that's why I'm here. But yeah.
Oh, thank you. And I met Sylvie. So at this big conference, I think there's 3,700 or people. And there were Asians there from Asia. There was a global conference. And then there was a handful of Asian Americans. And then I saw Sylvie and Sylvie saw me. And I think she saw my Aren't Asians All Alike. And so if anybody sees my little Aren't Asians Alike and they are bold enough to repeat it back to me, then they think, oh, no. So anyways, it is, yeah, I'm glad you're out there, Sylvie. So, and I think I can share how I felt othered at this last conference, even though I tried so hard to not to fit in. I knew I would not fit in as a newcomer. No matter who you are, you're not going to fit in. But there were 4 people in the 5 days I was there with 3,700 people. 4 people initiated conversation with me, and I'm I'm wearing things that normally are notable to women, like, oh my gosh, right? And I have the flash badge. I have the first timer button that's people are supposed to be nice to me, and I'm an extrovert. And I on 80s night, like I wore an 80s thing. I'm like, there's all these reasons that in a normal situation, people will come up and say hi to me. And so it was not, did not feel the love. Oh, people are so nice. Oh my gosh, they're so nice. Okay. But they know you, or maybe that was your experience as a white person. I wouldn't say people weren't not friendly, but when only 4 people initiate with you, and that was day 4 and 5, then that's not that welcoming. So, um, do we want to do any questions, and do we want to hear some stories? Let's open it up for, assuming my mom, actually, Mom, I should not assume that you're not going to say anything. Would you like to share a story when you felt othered? No. Okay. So, would anybody else like to share a story of when they felt othered?
I'll be brave and share again.
Okay.
Like Catherine was saying, being the only minority in the neighborhood, my family had a business and we lived on top in an apartment. And when I was little, I didn't understand why, but now as an adult, I totally understand why. But we used to get obviously a lot of discrimination and stuff, meaning people would break windows, spray paint different signage and words and stuff. It was like a weekly basis. It was like the weekly chore on Saturday was to take, hot soapy water and scrub things down and all that stuff, and the broken windows and being broken into a couple of times and that sort of thing. And as a little kid, I didn't understand, like, my parents, like, why aren't you calling the police? Like, why aren't you reporting X, Y, and Z and stuff like that? It didn't dawn on me until like, my teenage years. Well, of course they're not gonna, because people know you live upstairs. So like they can do something worse to you because they know where you live and that sort of thing. And I wish that wasn't the case, but I mean, like, I think a lot of cases, especially in the Philadelphia area, these small mom and pop type places, the family members do live above or somewhat nearby. And there have been cases of people following the owners of the shop home and, attacking them, robbing them, that sort of thing. So I don't know, I sort of wish, like, I always think like, purpose in life and, wish I could do X, Y, and Z, like that sort of thing of like, how can we help those small businesses stay safe and that sort of thing. I don't have a solution. I'm just putting it out there that I wish there was a way to keep them safe because, people are going to follow you home and, people have, terrible motives and stuff like that sometimes. And I just wish that, I wish just everyone respected one another. It doesn't matter like who or what your age, whatever, and all that. It's like, hey, I'm just trying to survive and, make a living for myself and my children and family and that sort of thing, and help one another grow instead of, defeating one another.
Judy, thank you for sharing that. Because I was quite privileged, and so I didn't have the situation of living in the city and all that. And I'm thinking of all because I keep track or used to keep track of all the Asians, violence against them. I just saw the 91-year-old lady who was just thrown down the other day. And with a lot of the Asian victims, there's a number of them who don't want to be, their face is okay because people think they look alike anyways, but their names, they keep their names kind of out because they're all concerned about the backlash of somebody knowing. So that sometimes their face is there, but their name is not.
As you can see, that's one of the, my last name on here is not my last name. And it's a way to stay safe in Zoom meetings and other, because I've had situations where I'll be in a meeting and then I stupidly, when the pandemic first started on Zooms, I put my face out there and then like people would say things or there would be issues and, me being Asian and stuff. So I strictly use this last name, which is not my last name on Zooms.
Will you take a load of that, everybody? Listen to what she had to change her name so then she's not othered. That is so hard. And Judy, do you is this just a fictitious name? Like, what's that? Or does this have some meaning?
No, it's just Judy is my name, but the last name is not my name. And so I figure it's safer to stay that way versus like, yeah.
So there's so much with names. So understanding and that she's not on camera right now, but because she went to the gym, but be aware that some folks feel like they need to not show their face and have a white name. And so I think that's important to hear. So let's hear from some other folks, either what are you taking in, or if you have a story as well. I feel like this has been Asian centered, which is great. We can move the center around as well.
Did you still want to move to other people of color after Asian people speak, or?
No, Kevin, would you like to say something?
Well, I in listening to the stories, I always think that a person's lived experience and a person's willingness to share that is so crucial in just the whole kind of diversity, equity, DEI world, because so many people live in bubbles, and they live in denial that the stories that you've shared, all of you, this evening, they live in denial that this kind of thing even happens. You know, because they're living out in a nice, quiet suburb somewhere, and they're going, oh, you know, that person must be over exaggerating, or why would anybody have to change their name on a Zoom call? You know, things like that. So it's really important because to hear these stories, because data and statistics have a place as well, but there's nothing like really hearing somebody's personal experience to really resonate with someone else, because that's somebody kind of bursting your bubble. So I just really appreciate everybody being willing to do that, because you don't have to do it, but I think we learn from it.
Yeah. Thank you. Go ahead, Lenore.
I learned a lot from this, and I appreciate everyone's sharing. You know, some of the things from people's past, you know, I learned from them, but I also, when people share stuff that is still occurring, I guess that, you know, that reinforces my desire to keep in this and keep working on it, because clearly, you know, we have farther to go than I thought. So I thank everyone for opening up about that.
Yeah, thank you. Other both personal stories or feedback? Go ahead, Jennifer.
Hi. Yeah, I really appreciate everyone's willingness to be vulnerable and share your experiences with otherizing. It's really important to understand and internalize just what that experience has been like for you. So I really want to say thanks. I definitely throughout my life have experienced othering, growing up in a conservative religious environment where there were a lot of no's for women. And that was really an experience. I grew up very much in the purity culture movement. And that was a challenging othering experience for me. And I have a disability that I began to recognize as a 6th grader. And it's a neurological movement disorder that causes a tremor. And so when that happens, I have struggled with reconciling that feeling of other, of being different, because having a tremor is devalued, whereas not having a tremor is valued in our society. So that's something that has also been an experience of othering for me. And as I have learned increasingly over the years about racial equity and the bias that we have built up systemically in our society, I think I've recognized those experiences that I've had of feeling otherized, that are experiences that didn't impact my life or death. They didn't impact my ability to purchase a home or things like that. But they were entry points for me to be able to relate with what that might look like and how significant that must be. And so I really appreciate the sharing, because it helps me learn. And I just appreciate being able to be together in a space where we rehumanize each other and stand in solidarity together, recognizing that we are all valuable human beings. And I will close with the quote that I really love, that is by Adrienne Marie Brown, saying, "Each of us is precious, and we together must break every cycle that makes us forget this." So thank you for helping us remember.
And thank you for sharing, because I think I'm always wondering, how do people come to us, come to Asian allies? And it's because you already had that understanding of othering because of your experience with the conservative family and the tremors And my friend 𝗬𝗓𝘃𝗃, she forgot which group her mom was from, white, but one of the ones not liked. And so she had that, and she was also from a conservative group in her. And so it's like, oh, so when you share, we can also understand the threads of how do we find more of you all who already have some sort of understanding. So thank you for that. Other people to share?
Jolene, I thank you to everybody who has shared their experiences. As someone who thinks about this all the time in terms of how, like, moving every day as an ally, I think about someone's level of concern, right, within my family, the people I work with. Like, if I don't have a level of concern for humanity, all of humanity, be able to see the person sitting beside me in their full humanity, if I'm not close to that, right? Your stories gave me a sense of proximity. Then I can turn around and share that as I'm trying to, like, change hearts and minds, because that's really what it comes down to. And Jolene, if I could share a story. So 2 weeks ago, when you guys were talking about the conference that you went to, and that next day I was talking, as I said, I'm a recruiter, and I was talking, and I recruit for finance. So that's a very, exclusive industry. Not a lot of seats being pulled up to the table for underrepresented folks. So I was talking to my recruiting partners, and I said, I really would like to get in front of the people making the hiring decisions, but I got to tell you, and I started to share your story about how you'd went to the conference. I said, this is somebody that I know that is like such an extrovert, right? And it was obvious that night when you were talking, like, that you were, you felt othered, like you were not seen at all. And so I started to share that story as a way to say, hey, you may not have, individuals in your life that they probably all look like you, but when you come to work, that's when you really see a range of diversity across the spectrum of diversity, right? And we need to be conscientious of that, like when we're setting people up for interview panels, right? And making sure that they're represented. And it was completely shut down. I didn't even get to share all of the story. And so that's where I've been stuck in terms of, like, I keep coming back to, do people even give a shit, right? Like, can I even get you to have a level of concern to see another person's humanity? And so that's why these conversations are so powerful, and it creates, like, there's a level of proximity right now for me, for everybody in this group, and I don't know any of you well at all. But because you leaned in and shared those very personal stories, I'm closer to you. So thank you.
I wanted to add something to what Jennifer said too, about people like not having compassion and not really giving a shit, and that whole thing. I've been forcing myself to read a lot of the comments around the murder of 𝗀𝘃 in Memphis. And of course, there's a certain amount that are there that say, well, that's what happens when you run from the police. If he just hadn't run from the police, and it's, for me, it's their way of staying in that denial of, like, well, I've got to, it can't be what it really is, which I can't even find the adjectives to describe it. So it must be something else. So we're going to put the blame for this man who was beaten to death on him. It has nothing to do with a person running. He was just flat out murdered. But I think that people, Jennifer, to your point, I think people convince themselves that they are compassionate. That's the problem. It's kind of like an alcoholic who, he says, I'm not an alcoholic, but has 2 cocktails every night when he comes home.
Yeah. And honestly, Kevin, so I mean, this couple of weeks ago when the young man in LA, 𝗬𝗓𝗏, I think is his last name. Anyway, was murdered. I was talking to my husband. My husband says kind of the same thing we're able, and I'm having these conversations out loud with my kids, my family, whoever, will let me talk. And he said kind of a similar thing. And I was just like, whoa, and I was like, you're not bringing the backdrop of, XYZ. So last Friday, when that news broke, I had it on TV. We watched the videos. I mean, it was like very important to like, it's manufactured proximity in a way, right? Because he's watching it, but he was incredibly like in it, like visceral reaction. And I was just like, okay, there's one step, right? I'm one step closer to him seeing the humanity. Because it doesn't, it wouldn't affect him as a white man. So
Takes time.
yeah,
That's for sure.
yeah.
And thank you for doing that with your family and with your spouse. There are a lot of Asians that have white spouses or other, and it's, it's a lot of, it's tough to talk about. So thank you for doing that. And before Judy speaks, I just put in the chat, this was on the Daily Show, all week. Tyree's on the Daily Show. He's the topic. And I thought that this one today was particularly good. They're talking with Tyree's lawyer, Crump. And it's pretty good straight talk and simplifying the challenge. And I thought it was really clear and good and hopeful. So anyways, I just put it in the chat. Judy, where'd you go? Go ahead, Judy.
I'm here. I actually had a question. Back in, I think it was like 2014-ish, I was talking to a friend of mine. We had met through an alumni association with college and stuff. And she's a couple years younger than me, like 7 or 8 years younger than me. And so she lives in downtown Center City, Philadelphia. She works in finance, that sort of thing. And so I thought like, oh, we're like-minded, that sort of thing. We've both been educated, college degree and all that other stuff. And I remember seeing on the news of what happened to Trayvon Martin and, other young Black men. And I was talking to her about it, and she was just like totally unaware because she was in her bubble of like, that doesn't affect me. I don't know this person. It didn't happen in my city and that sort of thing. How do I get friends, people, whoever, like to be more aware of what's happening in the world, of how if it affects one person and it affects everyone, like I certain friends or colleagues, and they're like of that mind frame of like even like older generations are like, well, it didn't affect me, my family, my friends, my city, or my race or whatever. I'm just like, no, but do you see how that person's a human being? Do you see how like things that have happened in history keep repeating themselves? And if we don't want it to repeat itself, we need to do something about it. I'm not like a huge protester person or anything like that, but I feel as if people like need to be aware and stick up for one another and, just do the right thing, like that sort of thing.
I completely feel that, Judy. I got to tell you, yeah, like there was an incident that had happened in the news in my local hometown. So I like posted it on Facebook, and then I'm just constantly like making the ask, like, please just see that person's humanity and act, right? And you think like, God, does it really take that much courage to like just see someone's full humanity?
Exactly.
And so that's what I'm struggling with right now. That's why like the whole level of concern, like, I mean, I'm going to keep sharing and saying things and moving towards it. But yeah, I'm kind of like, yeah.
I feel like sometimes, like, even here's a prime example of it. Like when I was little growing up, I always assumed, oh, everyone gets the same lesson, like in social studies, science, whatever their subject matter and everything. And so, but of course that's stupid because it's very biased of thinking that way because everyone has a different school district, teacher, principal, and all this other stuff. But my basis was like, okay, well, if this is history, then everyone's learning it and stuff. But then sometimes as an adult, when you refer back to something and someone is like totally unaware of like, Brown versus Board of Education, 1950, like different things, and people are like unaware of like, oh, that happened, or just what a couple of weeks ago, the movie The Butler was on television on in Philadelphia. Like Bounce TV does a lot of TV movies of that, and I was telling friends and family, like, oh, I've never seen this before. So I was watching it and stuff like that, and I had it on the background and talking to other people that were in the room, and they're like, that never happened. I'm like, no, that's actual footage of stuff that happened in history. People did have, were sprayed with water. People, the dogs were like, sick, whatever the word is, like the dogs and the police and all that, were set on the people and everything like that. And they're like, that can't be true. I'm like, that actually happened. That's actually like historical fact. There are pictures, there are newspaper articles and stuff like that. But some people don't believe that things like that actually happen. And in one case, I can say like, oh, okay, well, they didn't grow up in this country, so they're unaware of the history. Okay, that's fine. But then once you know about it, and you're like, okay, that actually happened. Or maybe they did grow up in this country and they were aware of it. Or maybe their families and friends and teachers never talked about it. And so they were semi-unaware of it, I'll say. It's sort of like, I keep giving these like, maybe this, maybe they just weren't sure. Maybe it was unknown to them. But now that they're aware of it, like, shouldn't their attitudes and actions change somewhat from learning this new fact? And it's similar to like the Holocaust, I will say. Like some people are like, that really happened? I'm like, yeah, 6 million people. Like people, we have a museum in our city devoted to it at Fifth and Market. Like, go check out the museum. There's facts, there's photos, there's audio recordings, there's different things. So I don't know. I just find it I just wish people were more aware. So the respect is my biggest wish. My second biggest wish is awareness.
Kevin, would you like to share? I see you're unmuted.
Am I sharing you mean a personal experience or just my thoughts?
Just or how to communicate with people who don't.
Well, I guess I try to use like analogies. Like sometimes I'll hear of a situation where someone has done something really egregious, and then I hear this person defend that person and try and diminish it greatly by saying, well, it was just a joke, or well, it was not that big a deal. You gotta take the high road, whatever. And so I try and turn around and say, okay, so if so-and-so came into your house and said that to your wife, would that be fine because it's not that big of a deal? And sometimes that stops them in their tracks because they're trying to figure out, it's like confusing to them. Well, wait a minute. I just said it's okay it's like construction workers. And I shouldn't pick on construction workers, but it's the old stereotype of woman's walking down the street, a bunch of guys start whistling and howling and carrying on, right? Very rude. Don't even know this woman, right? But somehow, well, that's how guys are. But if it's your mom or your sister or your wife walking down the street and they're doing that, would that be okay then? So I try and burst the hypocritical bubble, so to speak, because it's just like when I hear, I have said, let's just say certain ex-presidents are racist and have debated that. People saying, well, how do you know that? Like, prove it to me. And I said, well, how do you know that somebody doesn't like you? They don't have to say a word to you. But I can say, well, that Jolene Jang, she doesn't really like me. Well, what did she say? I said, she didn't say anything, but I can tell by her body language, her facial expressions. She doesn't show up to my meetings. She rolls her eyes whenever I speak. I mean, there's so many forms of racism. And so somehow that will get through to them at times if I can place them in the situation where they're walking down the street and somebody calls them a slur. And say, okay, well, you're going to just let that roll off your back. Well, no, I'm going to punch the guy. So, okay, well, then why aren't you honoring the other person's reaction? Like, Gil, who had chased a guy down the alley. That's perfectly understandable. If you're going to say that to somebody, then you deserve to be chased down an alley. Anyway, I hope that made sense. It's difficult though, because if somebody's 40, 50 years old, it's taken them that long to get that mindset. So 1 half-hour diversity training isn't going to change a lot, but at least if you can kind of put a dent in the iceberg and keep them moving in the right direction over time, hopefully they will start to see the light. And some people do, I think.
And I want to add to Kevin is really helpful, useful, effective
I like
with
that one.
with the analogies and for the idea of cancer. And I just heard about my friend had cancer today, but
Sorry.
oh, it'll just go away. Oh,
If we don't talk about it, it'll just go away, right? Like racism.
Right.
Just don't talk about it.
And we all know people with cancer. And so picking, selecting different non-color related something that they can relate to, you know, are you a mom? Do you have a pet? You know, like different, those aren't, I'm not good at this. So Kevin is, so listen to more of Kevin. We have lots of videos together because he makes it so relatable. Like, oh, when you're going to work, oh, everybody, a lot of people go to work, not everybody, but so just trying to figure out how to take this very specific and then make it generic and personal.
Just try and put the person, I mean, I would suggest, if you can, it doesn't always work, try and put the person in that position, put them in the other person's shoes. I think sometimes that can help, because people, I think a lot, it's not just white people, but I think a lot of privileged people, they've never had to think about this stuff. So as soon as you start talking about white this or white that's, white that, they get all, you know, whoa. You know, I said, well, you don't get up in the morning and turn on the news and hear stuff about white people being shot and, you know, in grocery stores in Buffalo, or Asia, or, you know, or white people being mowed down in spas in Georgia. You don't think about it. So as soon as somebody starts to look at you and the color of your skin, which we get all the time, then you're having a meltdown.
And I keep trying to share what it's like to be an Asian, but people are never going to get it. But I keep trying. So
Right.
Keep on
it's
trying.
like, right. It's like, oh, I think it was last week, where Trevor, a older white man, he was like, it's hard for me to understand. And it's like, yeah, of course. And so he asked questions to try and like, try and understand a little better. And I think it's also just persistence. I'm still at it. Do I feel like quitting like every other day? Oh yeah, definitely. All the time. Like, why am I doing this? Nobody's listening to me. But there's few people here today that are listening. And so it keeps me going. Catherine?
Yeah, when you said like they'll never understand, I agree. And I think that's not the point. I don't think the point is to get people to understand our experience or like to feel our experience, because they never will. I think it's to get them to believe our experience. Maybe it's a subtle difference, but just to like understand that they won't understand.
It's that proximity, right?
Yeah,
It's the proximity.
exactly.
I'll never walk in your shoes.
Yeah.
But
And that's something that my husband had said to me. So my husband is white, and I've explained to him several things. You know, and I'll make comments about like what it's like to be an Asian woman, and he'll say, he just acknowledges, I will never understand, like I'll never know what it's like to be an Asian woman, and that in itself is validating. That he gets that he doesn't know and that he believes me. So I think that's enough.
Yeah, and to not be gaslit, like let the people talk. Like share and validate. Oh, I do not know what it's like to be you, but I'm hearing you. And I was having I was talking to my boyfriend who's Ethiopian. He's 6'1", 200 pounds, athletic build. He doesn't safety. You know, it's like he doesn't understand that really. And he was in Ethiopia. There's crime all over. He's like, there's a lot of crime there, but you know, as an athletic build Black man and his experience, he doesn't understand what it's like to not feel safe. But also he grew up in Ethiopia where it is not so safe. So I hear. So, and it's just hard. He doesn't deny my safety, but doesn't know what it feels like. And then Gil mentions the Asian Americans on PBS Learning. There's a whole series of different Asian American stories. That's a good learn. I also wanted to make note in the chat here where Judy was talking about her place being broken into in the mailbox, et cetera. And so Catherine also said the same for her family as well. And so think about all the other Asians that have had this and how common that is. And so when we try and think of how come Asians aren't speaking up, I don't know if I'd speak up if I had situations like where I was feared for my life and my family's life. I mean, I'm very careful when I ask Asians to speak. And I am what's the word? Disappointed that there aren't more Asians to speak, but I'm speaking from privilege. My parents are right here and they're alive and they're English speaking. And I didn't have the pressures to be an engineer or a lawyer. I was a fund specialist. Like I didn't have all the things that all the other Asians are, with such rigid. And so I guess as we think about the pressures of Asians and all the things that they've gone through growing up as, being teased and bullied and beat up, I didn't have that. And so it's easier for me to speak up. And with that, it is still very difficult. So somebody just raised their hand. Go ahead.
That was me. This is Judy. Hi.
Go ahead, Judy.
I was thinking like when I always refer back to when I was little and all that, but like a lot of times people make it very basic of like, Black, white, Asian, and that's the only like differences or groups that they see and all that. But even within each group, there's a socioeconomic background of it, like you were saying, like privileged enough to have your parents speak English. One of the things my grandmother would often say to me is, "Oh, I've been in America for like 15 years, and I feel really sad that I can't even just walk up the street to McDonald's and get a hamburger because I don't know how to ask and I don't speak English, so I can't ask and purchase a hamburger," something as simple as that. But also like within each race and ethnicity, like people have to support one another. I didn't realize until I think it was like 2010, I met my friend Amy, and she had mentioned that even within her own family, how like I didn't notice because I didn't know her sister and all that, but like apparently she has darker skin than everyone else in her family. And there's like a colorism fact too of like, she's like, oh, when like I was little, like people would always say, oh, my sister Sophie and my brother, like they're so cute and adorable and all, but you're so dark. Do you think like you'll get lighter as you get old? Like, and it never dawned on me. I'm like, you're dark, like color, complexion. But then I was like, oh my gosh, Shiseido and all these other Asian brands and how they want to brighten and lighten your skin and everything like that. And I remember my mother always saying like, oh my gosh, I've got these freckles and these dark spots and all that. And if you look at any of the Asian magazines, a lot of them will push the narrative of like, oh, you want to be bright and light and luminescent and all these terms or whatever you want to call it. Basically like making yourself feel bad because you're a shade or two darker than, other people in your family or in your group or whatever the case may be and all that. And it's an othering thing. And I'm just like, seriously, people? Like, I mean, we have bigger fish to fry, if you will, of like, there's like war and disease and famine and other stuff going on in the world. Like, we should be fighting that stuff, not each other. We should be collaborating, finding solutions, finding new, cures for cancer and other diseases. Like, our mind and energy should be spent doing that versus focusing on like how different we are. It should be using all our resources together to find ways to heal one another, make things better and easier for everyone.
Yes, and yes, I agree. And whenever I hear, let's not look at the differences, I just heard differences. That's also something just to be aware of. I do want to highlight the differences and the commonalities, because on the Trump side, it's like, we're all the same. Let's not concentrate on the differences. We all are bleed red. And so whenever I hear, let's not think about the differences, I just want to, be aware of that's what some folks say to, like, let's not talk about racism. We're all the same. Yeah, differences I try and highlight them and make them cool and interesting. Okay, we are at time. I want to share one more thing, but I want to share this little term here. Came out today, and it's about language. I use a lot of fighting language, a lot of battle, and I'm fighting because I feel like I look at violence all the time, and I use that. But maybe I should rethink that. Oh, here we go. Okay. This is the last thing here. Spotlight for everybody. Okay, and this is Anna Taylor. I asked her for information, so I'm still waiting for that. So instead of saying we're going to pull the trigger, I'll take a stab at that. Do we jump the gun? I'll bite the bullet. That'll kill 2 birds in 1 stone. What's the deadline? All these are murdery. And I am definitely sensitive to the stabbing, because Asians are stabbed and shot. And so I have already been sensitive to that. So, and I'll post this with her information in Asian Allies. Instead, pull the trigger. We're going to launch. I'll take the first pass at it. Did we start too soon? I want to avoid it. So anyways, just look at the language, because there is so much violence with guns and stabbing, and some of us are sensitive to it. So to just kind of be aware of that. Okay, closing remarks from other people than myself.
Well, I had a question because I came in kind of late, so I know where some people are from, but I don't know where Catherine's from.
Hi, apologies. I am in the Boston area. I grew up in the Pittsburgh area.
Okay, and then Gil's from around here, right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, I think I've got everybody. Well, Sylvie, is Sylvie the one from Maryland, or is that Judy? Okay.
That's me.
And then Judy is from somewhere.
I'm in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Okay, and you picked for your name, you picked a famous folk singer.
I know, because people have asked me in other Zooms to sing for them, and I'm like, I had no idea that was a famous. Like I knew, like I had seen her on television before, and then somebody was like, "Oh, I love your song," and I'm like, "What are they talking about?"
What are they talking about? Right?
I didn't connect the. Okay, so I'm very bad at connecting artists with their work. So sometimes I'll hear something on the radio, I'm like, I love that song and all that, and then they'll mention an artist or so and so has #1 hits, and I'm just like, I have no idea that. And then all of a sudden, I connect a song on. I do love that, like Adele. I was like, I didn't know I liked Adele before. That who I knew.
You're not alone. You're not alone. That's all I had.
It was nice meeting you all. This is very interesting. Well, I like this was it safe space, I'll say, and talking about things that have happened to me in the past, because to be quite honest, like there's no one else I can talk to about it. Like I mentioned the thing about Woolworth, and like my parents still like don't really acknowledge it. I'm just like, because I remember being like 5 or 6 and walking in, like there was a restaurant in Woolworth was an old department store thing in Philadelphia a long time ago. No longer there, but they had a restaurant in there, and I've always like I could hear the people eating. I could see like over the fence thing inside there, but we could never go in there, and I didn't understand why and stuff. And then like it took me like probably 10 years later to realize why. But yeah, the lady was at the hostess person was just like, yeah, we don't like your kind in here, et cetera, et cetera. And I didn't really understand that as like a 5-year-old. So yeah, that. But yeah, there's many instances of othering, if you will. So I always make an extra effort, if you will, to be more inclusive, no matter what room I'm in. One of my best friends actually said to me, it's been 20 plus years I've known her, and she's like, do you remember when we first met? And I'm like, I don't know, we had class together or something. She's like, no, we were at like a meeting get together thing, like in college, like the first week and stuff. And I was sitting by myself in a corner and everyone else is chit chatting and all that. And you walked up to me and introduced yourself. And from then, like, and then you invited me to like every other thing that you were in. And therefore that's how we became friends and stuff. And I'm still friends. She's my best friend, even though she doesn't live in the state anymore. And she and her friend group and her cousins and I are friends. And I just remember very vividly, speaking on the topic of this talk, us going to Cracker Barrel in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is a little bit outside of Philadelphia. And it was very odd to everyone in that room because our group of like 9 or 10 people, we had Asian, we had Hispanic, we had Southeast Asian, Black, white, like everyone under the rainbow, like, and we sat right in the middle of the restaurant and people were just staring at us like, what the heck is this UN group that's just walked in? And we were like, 25, 26 years old. And they were just like, huh. And it was just strange for them to see such a multicultural group, I guess, but we were all just friends. It wasn't like some kind of like meeting or anything like that. And with everyone's kids and family and cousins and friends and stuff. And something similar also, Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, I went there to be a bridesmaid for a friend's wedding. And I was probably the first non-white person that had walked into the Applebee's like ever, because every head swiveled and turned and stared at me for the first 30 minutes that I was there. I'm like, I'm just a human being. I'm just eating here like the rest of you are eating here, okay? And you're the only restaurant that's open. So that was it.
Yeah. So I want you to also hear what Judy said, where she just glossed over it. But this is the only place I can talk. I haven't met Judy before. Judy is a stranger. She's an Asian stranger. And there are so many Asian strangers that need somewhere to talk. I needed to talk to an Asian stranger. That's why I created Empowered Asians and this thing. And understanding that that there are many of us Asians who are very social. It's not a lack of social skills. It's a lack of our friends wanting to hear what's happening with us. And so Judy is zero alone. There are so many, and a lot of them with white spouses too. And it's not like the white spouses aren't on board, but it's harder to talk to as well. So there is a big need out there. So when you can reach out to your Asian friends, colleagues, and neighbors and just say, hey, gosh, the news is terrible. Do you want to talk about it? Or I'm thinking of you or anything like that. It is helpful. So thank you all of you for sharing. And the idea of proximity, talking about proximity. Oh, that's right. Because I try and create these proximities to as many people as possible, because I've got so many stories of other people's stories and I need to help deliver them. So thank you for that. And Kevin, thank you for the theme, othered, and always being there to support. Mom being silent there, mom and dad, thank you. Silently supportive right there. So thank you all. And I will share some different links online on Facebook. So thank you for showing up, everybody.
See you later.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Nice meeting you all, and thank you for the invite on.
Yeah. And
Facebook.
Judy, let me stop here. Oops.